A week or two ago, I posted that short clip, that cinematic sequence of Steph on the beach, the piece of work I called Taken by the Sea. And I had a couple questions, people asking me to talk that process, how I would film something from start to finish, the pre-production, the production, the post-production. That's what I'm going to cover in a nutshell here today. This is a very broad overview, nothing too in-depth. Really, it's just designed to answer a few general questions and to show you my process. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and hopefully it can inspire you to create a process of your own. Okay, today we're going to look at how I edited that short clip. I remastered that from an old project 2 years ago, Taken by the Sea, that I filmed with Steph at Virginia Beach. So we're going to look at the pre-production, the production, the post-production, primarily focusing on my editing process for that 1 minute clip. Like I said, I made a new clip for tutorial purposes today. So let's go ahead and dive into the tutorial. All right, so post-production. Here we are at the workstation. Let's jump back a little bit to pre-production for that project. Pre-production is where you plan everything. I've been on projects where there's scripts, there's storyboards, there's a big budget, there's all these key players, there's gaffers, there's sound engineers, there's cameras, there's assistant cameras, there's a director. In this case, it was just me and Steph, my camera, 2 lenses, and a drone, and here I am editing on my laptop. So it can get very simple or it can get very complex. You can use your phone. You don't necessarily need a script. You can just go out there and create based on your vision and see what you get. But in most cases, it's good to have some sort of plan, and that's where pre-production comes into play. So in this particular case, I was on my phone. I wrote down a few things. I knew I wanted to be at Virginia Beach. I knew I wanted it to be in the early morning so no people would be on the beach. I couldn't account for the weather. I was hoping it would be sunny, but it turned out to be raining, which actually worked, I think, in this case. It helped add to the drama. I knew I wanted her in 2 looks, so I got her a swimsuit, and we had this like lace blue skirt that you saw in the video. So she had 2 looks, and I had a very general sense of the kind of shots I was going to get. I knew I wanted a drone shot, an establishing shot, wide angle, and then I wanted to punch in close to get her emotions, her subtle features, and I knew what kind of angles I wanted, like getting up high to show her in more of a give the audience more of a dominant perspective, and then some shots getting down more low where she's taller than the audience, giving her more power. So I had this very generic shot list. So that covers the pre-production. I had my Canon R5, I had a 256 gig CF Express card, I had a 50mm lens, a 24 to 70mm lens, and I had my DJI Mavic 2 Pro, and yeah, that was it. No tripods, no stabilizers, everything was handheld. I knew I didn't want any dialogue, so I didn't bring any audio equipment. It was just me and Steph, so I didn't want to hire an assistant to hold lights or bring out C-stands. I wanted to keep the equipment minimal because we're on the beach. I didn't want sand everywhere. So yeah, that was it. Now we're here in the post-production side of things. Let's go ahead and jump into that. Let me go ahead and start screen recording if I'm not already. Okay, we are. And here we are. So Final Cut Pro, basically whatever editing software you're using, they're all pretty much the same in terms of the fundamentals. So I'll talk Final Cut Pro. If you're using free software such as iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, or there's a lot of apps out there you can download too for cell phone footage, there's nothing wrong with free software. So first thing, you're gonna back up your footage. As I mentioned, you're gonna create a library. In this case, I called it Taken by the Sea. You're gonna create an event, which was the highlight video, and then you're gonna create your project, which is Taken by the Sea, and that's where you have all of the footage that you can pull from. This is just supplemental footage, just for documenting purposes. My main footage, as you can see, was right here. So I don't have very many clips because I knew I was just going to keep this a 1-2 minute production. The original intent was to create a YouTube intro for Canon R5 review, which I published on YouTube, and it did pretty well. So I was happy that the work was well received and the production overall was a success. So yeah, here's my footage, and I create my project. You can see the project name is Taken by the Sea. I was filming in 4K. I was filming in 120 frames a second, which gives me the ability to slow it down, giving me that really dreamy, buttery footage. I was filming in 4096 by 2160 pixels. My timeline on Final Cut Pro was 24 frames a second, giving it that cinematic feel, which is industry standard if you're wanting your footage to look cinematic. My codec was Apple ProRes 422. I was using a standard color profile 709. I was filming flat picture profile. I wasn't filming in log. Log footage would have given me more options in terms of color grading. I just wanted to keep this very simple though, and I can still color grade the footage. Okay, now we have our timeline. The first thing I do is get music. I use Epidemic Sound to get license-free music, royalty-free music. I pay, what, $15 a month or so for that, and it's definitely worth it for me because I'm always filming and I'm always making productions both commercially and creatively, and that gives me the license to be able to use those musics, use that music in that service, even on commercial and paid projects. So Epidemic Sound, there's plenty of other services out there. That's just the one I use. I wish I was a composer and could make my own music and take the time to do that. That is just not the case right now. I'm a visual arts guy. I'm a filmmaker, so that's a service I am happily going to outsource. I downloaded a song by an artist I liked, and I put the song on the timeline. It's just as simple as using this platform, downloading the song, and then placing the song on your timeline. In this case, I already have one. And then I pull from all my footage. You have something called in and out features. Whatever platform you're using, you can typically select from your clip a starting point and an ending point. And then you have a piece of a clip that you can work with on your timeline. That's just very basic, just in case you didn't know that. All right, then it's a matter of just plugging and playing and building a story. It's almost like making Legos. You have this story, all this footage you've got, now you're just putting it in the right places, and that's where a script or a storyboard can really help you. But in this case, we didn't really have a script or a storyboard. I'm just plugging and playing based on my vision, and I know I want to start it out with an establishing scene, so that's where this shot comes from. We got lucky, the bird was flying by, and it just adds a little more motion and depth. I want to establish my character, so I don't want to just jump in and say, hey, here she is. I want to show her in a subtle way walking along the beach. It kind of builds suspense. And yeah, I want to introduce my other player, which is a sea. In this case, it's almost like the antagonist, kind of like adding that rough dimension to the story. So in every story, as we know, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You want to establish your scene, you want to build your characters, you want to establish conflict, and then you want to sum it all up. That's what I'm trying to do here. And then we see our characters, our players interact with each other. The sea is touching Steph. And now I'm putting Steph in this more submissive role of her looking up into the sky, almost interacting with the audience, kind of drawing you in a little bit. In my mind, in the story that I'm trying to portray, she's daydreaming and she's getting lost in thought. Now I want to introduce conflict, so the music kind of bumps up a little bit in terms of the drama. So I want to establish the conflict, and that's what we're doing here. So that's the suspenseful part right there, that little, where I cut out the footage, goes to a black screen, and it will establish more of our character and the story art. And you can see here that I matched the clips to the music beat to provide more of a level of interaction with the audience. They can kind of get more in the story. and see more of the story, even if it is just for a brief second, and it pairs to the music, which just feels good all around. All right, and we end with her getting taken by the sea, and then it goes to black, and then she comes out a new person. It was kind of funny because this bird was just hanging around us. I don't know if it was the same bird flying in the earlier shot, but it's kind of like a secondary character. So for this scene in particular, I wasn't using a tripod. If you're filming at 120 frames per second, and you're slowing it down, it's very forgiving in terms of micro movements when you're holding a camera. But to compensate for some of that, let's see if I can find an example. Here's a clip that I thought was a little shaky, but I clicked the stabilize option. It's warp stabilize in Premiere Pro, and it'll basically account for those micro movements and punch in and adjust the footage to help it appear more stable. So you can see, I don't know if this is a great example, but you can see, if you look closely, let me fit this here. It's just, to me, in my eye, it's just a little shaky, so I hit stabilize and it'll account for that, those micro movements. So it's a good idea to just get a wide variety of shots in terms of your tight shots and your wide shots and your medium shots. It always gives you more options in the editing process, especially if you don't have a shot list in mind. Here, this kind of goes on the pre-production side of things. I messed up because these marks on her from her bathing suit were really bothering me, and I didn't want to. We didn't have the time to just wait around for them to go away. So maybe I should have filmed this look first, or had like some makeup solutions. I guess I could download some software to help me get rid of that, but I'm not doing all that right now. All right, and that last clip was kind of probably unnecessary. I should have just ended it right here. In fact, I probably will. Let's do that. That's a good ending scene. And the story is one of woman being taken by the ocean. Does she daydream she becomes somebody else and is transformed by her experience with the ocean, or is she actually there doing those things? So it's kind of like, it's a very weak narrative, but there's a narrative there nonetheless, paired with some pretty footage, and Steph's beautiful, of course. So it's a successful shoot in my opinion. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at some of the other technical aspects of it all. Fade ins is always a popular thing by adding that fade in transition. And on Final Cut, you can just hit Command T to add a transition, and you can see it kind of fades in and then it'll fade out. In terms of color grading, you can select each clip, and I would recommend color grading every clip individually and trying to balance it and match it to the other clips rather than doing just some global blanket color grading adjustment. But if you do have clips in the similar scene, it's as simple as hitting Command C and then Shift Command V to transfer those effects to that other clip. So that's a huge time saver and something that can just help maintain consistency in terms of your looks throughout the timeline. Color grading, you can see here I have a color wheel, and I have accounted and adjusted for my highlights and my, let's see here, before and after. I added a little bit of oranges to my highlights to accentuate the sunrise, and I added a little bit of some cooler tones to the shadows, and I decreased my shadows to give it more contrast. Again, this is not log footage, it's all flat, so I'm just doing very basic adjustments in terms of color grading. I'm not a colorist, I'm someone that's studying color grading for my own workflow, but I'm not a professional colorist, so it's that's one of my weak points, I would say. Something I'm getting better at, though. Let's look at sound design. We can, sound adds so much in terms of just interaction with your audience and getting them in the zone. So the only place I would add sound design is some places where the waves are crashing down. And I also, for whatever reason, just really like this bird. So I might add like a seagull sound effect. And Final Cut Pro, surprisingly, does have one. Otherwise, I'd have to download one from Epidemic Sound. Let's see. There we go. And we'll just hit that out point and drag in that. And let's see what we get here. I already know I'm going to want to bring the sound down a little bit. Let's see what. Something like that. Now I want some waves. Let's see if we have waves. Ocean. That's nice. Set the out point and bring it in and fade it so it gradually comes in, and tone it down a little bit. So it works, and these are all very subtle add-ons, but it's those details that add up that make the final production a lot better. So what else could we talk about? There's a lot, I can tell you. Editing is not sexy. You're here for hours editing something. In this case, I've probably been playing around with this for a couple of hours, spanned over 3 days. So it's definitely one of those things you don't want to rush, and it's one of those things that you go back and you have to correct something, or something doesn't work out and you don't like the scene, so you have to fix it, or the color grading doesn't work right. So it's just a lot of, it's not sexy, like I said. I guess we could talk about some effects. Let's see. I don't like to add a lot of cheesy effects on. If I'm doing a music video and wanting something like to add to make the scene a little better, I guess. But let's see. If we like put like random bokeh here, let's see what that does. That kind of works. And you don't want to overdo it. Definitely don't want to overdo it. So I might size, pattern, blur amount, opacity. I'll bring down the opacity slightly. Good. Yeah, and again, you don't want to overdo anything, so just keep in mind subtle is key. And that's basically my workflow. What did we cover? We covered the timeline, your frames per second. If you want it looking cinematic, 24 frames. Of course, account for your shutter speed rule. If you're filming at 24 frames, you want your shutter speed twice the frame rate. So I'd be filming at 1/50. Just little things like that. This is just an idea designed to give you an idea of how I work and how you can work. So I hope it's helped. Let me know if you have any other specific questions and or any other question in general, and I will make a point to answer it. All right, take care.